Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Ryan. How you doing?
How you doing? I am okay. Overall, I'm doing fairly well. I am excited to be here. How about yourself?
All right.
Yeah, you always say that you're right, but what's underneath that right? Is there a left? Are you ever all left?
No.
Okay, she said it on the pod. She said no to being ever on the left side of things. She's all right.
I'm never all the way left.
So she's sometimes in the center. You heard it here. No, all jokes aside, all of the funny shenanigans to the side, we're here for something very important on Yum Yum Podcast. We are talking about Season 2 of The Expanse. We have watched through the entire season and discussed all of the episodes, and now we're taking a moment to reflect, go over the high points, the low points, discuss things that have changed for us over the course of this season. But we are here to also confirm with one another as people watching the show our thoughts on it, because I know, Rachel, you feel a little differently on things in this series to myself.
Yes.
And
we are different people.
We are, and we both agree that Yum Yum was an amazing moment in Star Trek Discovery. So amazing that we named ourselves after that infamous moment, and it forever is burned into our brains.
Guacamole.
What was that, sorry? What was that, Lola?
Nothing.
Strychnine in the guacamole? Yeah, I totally understand. And we have a moment from Star Trek Discovery that we love in which a character off the cuff says yum yum, but it's not just off the cuff, it's sexy, it's funny, it's peculiar, and we like to remind everyone that that was allowed to happen in a modern TV landscape without any sense of irony. It was just there. It just happened. And we are just happening upon The Expanse. This is a series that we have not watched before. This is our first time through it.
Yes, it is.
You didn't even know, Rachel, when this series came out.
We can forget about that. We can forget about it. We can forget about it. That's in the past.
Just like the show was in your recollections in the far distant past.
Why are you so mean to me?
Why am I so mean to you, but why are you so cute about it? That's the thing that makes it difficult. But I saw some of the episodes when they first came out, dropped off. This is the furthest I've ever been with The Expanse, and of course it's the furthest you've ever been with it. And we release these episodes on our Patreon first, so if you're hearing this on the main feed, you should head on over to our Patreon, support us there, so you can hear these episodes a little bit earlier and join our community over on our group Discord, where you can discuss the things that we chat about during our watch-throughs of The Expanse, as well as just have a grand old time. But
yes,
let's get into the meat of the matter, Rachel.
Ooh.
Let's give our perspectives now that the season has concluded. We had some explosive things, some cliffhangers, some stuff that's leaving us on the edge of our seats.
I keep thinking I'll tell May about this when I get home. Normally my story's about soybeans. She pretends to care.
When I think back about this season as a whole, there's 3 things that really stand out to me. 1, I really liked how Miller ended. 2, Bowie was a shit show, but they're kind of cleaning up the mess now. And 3, this season, even more than the first, feels like it's just a little part of a much bigger thing.
I understand what you're saying, and I side with a lot of it. I thought Miller was a greatly improved upon character, and where they...
Hatless Miller is superior.
Hatless Miller, when he takes off that hat, he elevates to godhood, and I miss him so much because he did end in a spectacular way, one that not only was satisfying for the character arc, but it made great impacts on the show going forward.
Well, this is fully skipping to the end when we do predictions, but maybe, you know, he's just started a new life, being part of, like, basically making a new species. He got to have a baby with Julie.
You have said that you expect Thomas Jane as Miller to come back in a blue goo form, and I'm not opposed to it. But
I don't think it's going to happen. I like the idea that the sort of colony on Jupiter is their baby.
On Venus?
Oh, Venus.
It's okay. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I wonder if that takes any play into the story going forward. But my thoughts on the season overall are it's an improvement on the first. There's more unique qualities to this series now. There's
It's solidly
flavors.
found its voice.
I would say that it has a perspective to give on the world that it's inhabiting, while in the first, it was greeting us. It was saying, here's how everything plays out in this new landscape of science fiction television that you are going to be a part of. And it was a little too dry. The second season definitely ramps up with the serialization, but more importantly, character work. I think that's a big thing that I take away from the second season is it is more consistent with spending time on what's going on inside of the characters' heads as well as what motivates their hearts. And that was greatly appreciated because
The lore dumps
feel more natural.
Like, they're mostly over, so we get time on that stuff that you were just talking about, because they don't have to pack all of this information in such a short amount of time.
I like the season a lot more. I don't know if it's made me head over heels in love with The Expanse, but it is a better selling of the series than the first one is. We've actually had some discussions in our group Discord about how there are some people who say, oh, it gets good around the second season. Oh, really? You watch the first season, it's eating your vegetables, it's homework, but second season is when it gets good. Similar to how Babylon 5 is pitched in that way. And I can see the validity in that, but there are still some issues that are present in the second season that were in the first, but to praise it, they are significantly less than in that first season. Would you say that in terms of just an overview of this season that you're a fan of it, and has it warmed you up to The Expanse as a whole?
Yes and no. I still feel like I'm just along for the ride with you. Like, you're invested. But that doesn't mean that, like, I'm not. It's just like you've burrowed your way in fully. And I'm just like a few layers back, just being like, yeah. And almost sort of denying how deep into the show I am.
What do you think's holding you back?
I don't care what happens. I care what happens to our characters. And only some of them. Like, my devotion is very specifically targeted. And I don't care whether they succeed or they fail. In a lot of cases, I don't really even care if they live or they die.
Wow. And you like this show?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
I get what you're
if
getting
they
at there.
decided to kill off a character, if they killed Alex, right, I would be upset. But I also have enough confidence in the show to go, they would do that for the right reasons. Like, they would pull that from the box and do this in this way.
They did it with Miller.
Yeah. So it's a weird sort of mix where it's just like, I don't think, I know I wouldn't have made it this far into the show if I wasn't watching it with you for the pod.
It's a little dry for your sensibilities.
I would have noped out, and I would have occasionally chimed in, maybe watched an episode or two. You would have shown me some Amos scenes out of context, and I would have been happy with that.
I know you would. Here's his shirtless scene in the season 2 finale. Ooh, maybe I should watch this show, would be Rachel saying.
Yeah.
I totally am on the same wavelength as you when it comes to the overarching story aspect of it. I'm not biting at the bit to get to it. I'm more wanting to spend time with these characters and see them bounce off of one another and pair up with people that you would not expect. And that's a far cry from where we were in the first season, in which there were glimpses of potential to these characters, while more often than not it was sacrificed for the overarching story, and so we had to invest ourselves in that. And at the heart of the issue is The Expanse is very much playing it safe currently with familiar tropes and familiar story ideas and familiar beats within this genre. We called it last season super soldiers, and it's played out exactly how we said it would, but that's not necessarily negative because they do it with such supreme skill and expertise, and they play it straight. But it's those characters that keep us coming back to it more than will this break out into war? Oh no, will this corporate espionage scheme bleed into this?
Yeah.
And
we want to know the fate of our characters, not the fate of the universe.
We have said it, but this is a step up from that first season, and I want to hear why. We've already touched upon some of it, but in your words, what is the defining traits of the second season that show a boost in quality over that first one?
It felt more even-handed. Like, the first season had episodes, like whole episodes, that felt like a drop. Like, they dropped the ball. But this season, they didn't have whole episodes that were, like, bad. They had episodes that were mediocre and annoying, but none that were, like, really bad.
Or at least plots that were really bad within those episodes.
So there was always at least one moment in every episode that made me feel good about watching the show.
The improvements in pacing is very much apparent. The episodes within themselves feel quicker. They don't feel as slow and methodical in the way that we saw in the first. And I would imagine it's because we are looking at it from a different vantage point. The first season, we had the Miller storyline really drag its feet along because it was a detective story in which he's gathering all these little clues and breadcrumbs to lead to something that we could kind of figure out.
Yeah, it's like we saw further down the path than the detective did.
And the
it's just like,
journey,
wait, is he meant to be that dumb?
the journey wasn't as exhilarating, but a huge thing, and this is sadly still in this season, but it is huge to say that they have removed this cancer. That is, they had a lot of obvious writing tricks and junk in the first season. Tricks that were there to make the story or to make things fall into place. Havelock is a joke. We joke about Havelock. Havelock's a terrible character because he is so obviously a function rather than anything real. And this season...
Your fear.
My fear was...
Your fear came true. You said that season 1 would become irredeemable if he didn't come back.
In season 2.
And guess who was missing from all the season 2?
And it is irredeemable because the first season was littered with Havelock type things. What I mean by that is they were just a function necessary for the story and for the themes rather than feeling coherent and natural and seamless. I don't want to see the writer's hands all of the time. And the second season did not have that as abundant. The Bobby storyline had it the most, hence we had problems with that storyline a lot during the course of our discussions, as you could definitely tell if you go back and listen to our discussions on those Bobby episodes. But the first season was just struggling with those problems because what was underneath was really a spark of potential that we actually got to see in this season.
Kept on wanting the bubble to the surface, but never fully got there in season 1. But we got a taste for it, and that was the stuff that we really looked forward to in that first season, and that we've really enjoyed how it's come up much more in this second seathis
You can only get slapped around for so long before it boils out one way or another.
When I said that this season feels more even-handed, that helps the big moments hit harder. And I felt a lot more strongly about specific moments in this season than I did with the first. And they also felt like the ones that the show wanted me to attach to, not the goofy ones that I thought about a lot more when it came to season 1. But it's hard not to just say a bunch of Amos moments because I love that character.
Yeah, there's a great amount of moments of Amos being a standout.
Yes.
And he is a favorite for many people out there. We've already gotten that vibe from our community that listen to this podcast. And it's clear in the show itself. The show likes Amos.
Yeah, the show likes Amos.
The show likes certain characters.
The writers of the book
yeah, of course.
Character of Amos and the actor.
Isn't it always funny when you watch a show and you can tell when they like a character more than another character? Yeah. There are some characters you can just, you know that the writers don't like as much, and so they suffer. But there's so many great moments within the season, and Amos has a few. I love when he got shot near the end.
Why do I always get shot?
And he bitches about it.
Why am I the one? Like, the grenade? Yeah. The grenade moment really got me as well.
Oh, grenade! And it just throws it back, and you hear this horrible, monstrous sound, and he has this blank-faced expression of, that's a bit weird.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, that worked, was the way that I read that expression. Another moment that I liked, that is also Amos, is Naomi and Holden telling Alex and Amos about their relationship.
Yeah.
And they're just like, how long? It's like, pay up.
Oh my, and Amos afterwards just telling Holden that, hey, I'm totally cool with you guys being in a relationship.
She's like my sister, but I would totally fuck her.
If she would let me fuck her, I would totally be doing that because I do fuck, by the way. Don't doubt that I don't fuck, okay? Like, don't put any doubts on my abilities to fuck. I do that. A huge moment for Amos in my eyes was the Miller conflict at the beginning of the season and how he grew as a person through that. At the end of it, we get possibly one of the great scenes of the series, which is the group lasagna scene. We both went absolutely crazy for that because it was really the moment of this series that took time to live in this found family that we have become accustomed to during the adventure. They've been so focused in on running from next set piece to next set piece to next mystery box to next intrigue to next plot point that after Miller and Amos had their scuffle, they looked at each other and enjoyed a meal with the rest of the crew. Amos moved his tools and stuff off of the table so that Miller could sit down, and Miller and Amos were just having all of this exchange of dialogue with one another as well as was everyone else. There was smiles, there was laughs, the lasagna looked great. Thomas Jane, I will miss him being a series regular now because of how good he was in that scene. And I've always liked Thomas Jane as an actor, and I do think he did good work in the first season, but he really got to get cooking at the start of this season, and it's just such a shame that he wasn't there to the end of it because Miller, from him talking about, what was it, Teddy the Detector? I'm still smiling about that scene. It brings so much emotions for me.
Have another moment that's not like it's not a big moment. It's not a big thing. Obviously recency bias. I'm thinking a lot more about the last couple of episodes. I just want to mention the sidebar scene with Alex talking to the ship, and like 0G drinking Coke.
That was amazing, wasn't it? That was amazing. And he's listening to, as we found out, that was Martian country music. It just sounds so generic. It sounds like it could be from Earth. That Alex doesn't get a lot to do, but when they give him those beats, they're great. You said that this season allowed for those bigger moments to hit, but also they made those smaller moments linger more.
Well, we should mention some of those bigger moments. And I think the moment that made this season for me was Avasalara back on her roof, a very familiar setting, but her laying there waiting for the world to end.
That is paired with her talking to her husband as well. The things that we knew to be stabilizing forces for her are now just drifting away, and she is accepting it. Her on the roof, it was something that was visually memorable about the first season, and here it is again, and it's gained a level of sadness to it. And what about that has really stood out for you?
Well, one, it is visually striking. They do such a good job with her costuming. It's just beautiful and so elegant. And that's in contrast with the roof tiles and the night sky. but it's also a quiet moment of reflection and sitting with this character when they think that there's nothing to hope for left because they've done everything they can and all they can do is hold on to that hope, that little glimmer of hope.
Christian is a character that is confident in herself. She may have her doubts. She questions if she's a morally upright person, but she is firm in her beliefs nonetheless. And when faced with the potential of Earth being destroyed, everything that she's been doing this for, that having been pulled away from her, we see what she is underneath all of her convictions, and we see a good person still. She phones up her husband, played by Brian George, the wonderful Brian George, and they dared to do something that I didn't think was possible. They toppled the Mormon conversation scene as being the best scene of the show.
Yeah.
I really didn't think that we were going to get a scene that would affect me emotionally as well as on an intellectual level like that, because there was a sci-fi fun of he's on the moon and there's communication issues in which there's a delay, but this couple have a history together that is just subtextual. It doesn't need to be explicitly stated. We feel it in between the words, in between the moments of them looking at one another. And that conversation was fraught with emotions. We got to see the most vulnerable side of her, and yet she was still funny, and she was still a badass, and she was still
it wasn't
herself.
Like everything about her is a facade. It's that all of those elements of her armor come from her personality. And they've been built out for a specific purpose. And there's very few moments where she doesn't require any of that armor. And all of the ones that we've seen so far have been moments with her husband. And it's not all the time with her husband. She doesn't fully let her guard down all of the time with him. There are moments where she almost sort of forgets that he's not a player in the game that she's in.
And Brian George embodies this husband so seamlessly. He comes across as maybe a joke at first. Oh, it's Brian George. He's known for doing comedy, and he has this face. You just see him and you just say, of course, he's her meek, weak-willed husband. But he isn't that. He may be meek, but he isn't a weak-willed person. He's not a powerful man, and he's not cunning like her, but he knows who she is and he supports it. But he shows his concern, and when he articulates his concerns, they're never seen as weak or invalid. He's completely right. But he knows his place, and so does she. And that relationship is one of the more interesting ones out of any we get in this show that also, I'll bring this up now since it's just come up, but this show isn't really one where I ship people. I'm not really wanting romantic things happening between others.
No, like, I think we conveyed that very much in our discussion of Holden and Naomi getting together.
And that won't be the last you'll hear of that in this discussion. I think The Expanse does a really good job at writing pre-established relationships, whether they be romantic or familial or just platonic. I think they have a much better handle on writing people who have existed outside of the adventures that we are going through, rather than their relationships forming while we're on the screen.
Romantic relationships, because they do deal with the interpersonal dynamics of the crew fairly well. Like Amos and Miller's beef at the start of this season, and Amos and Alex's.
I don't know how to feel about their relationship. That's why I didn't want to say as much, because Alex and Amos, it feels like they've got it and then they drop it. I can't...
like they keep on going back to them to make conflict with the Rossi crew.
To just go even further in what you're saying, we get a nice platonic and possibly sexual relationship that was also one of my favorite moments of the season, of Naomi just being gal pals with Fred Johnson's right-hand woman and going out for a night on the town dancing.
Love that. Love that.
How much did we need that? Naomi is saddled
Naomi needed that, and we needed that for Naomi.
She is saddled with so much of the I'm the shoulder to lean on and I have to be the voice of reason, but I also have to be the instigator of drama. She doesn't always get the opportunity to just hang out and just have fun. And so that stood out to me as a moment of great reprieve for the character and made me grounded to her as well. Just seeing her look at Holden, be an absolute dipshit and say, fuck it, I'm going out. And she does, and she has a night out on the town. Brilliant. Really memorable to me.
In the meantime, you look like you could blow off some steam. I see you're from some rock. Care to put the ball to the wall? Pashang ya.
I'm gonna marry these together, but I liked Ehrenreit's speech about how if you give a monkey a stick, it will beat another one to death with it. But I pair it with the invention and the founding of the Epstein drive and how it shares that same idea of if we make this technological leap, we'll most likely do nefarious bad shit with it because we suck. But there's also the flip side in which we can do good with it. It's this balancing act. It's a struggle that we have within us. And the Epstein Drive story, like that little vignette, those little vignettes that we got, I thought they were just really well acted and shot and composed. And it was just a short film strung across several scenes in an episode. And it made the storytelling abilities of The Expanse have more flavor to it, because we've had flashback structures before, but they never felt as, I guess, cinematic as that one did.
Felt different. That one felt like it was a complete story on its own, and it was there to support the episode, whereas a lot of the other flashbacks that we've had in terms of like the structure, they've been there structurally, have felt like, we need this to give us an understanding of these characters in these events. Whereas the Epstein Drive was there for that purpose, to give us context, but the character within it had a very clear journey, and thematically it also linked with what was going on.
That episode and the series going forward, it helped the series going forward, but us to recontextualize what we had seen in the previous. And it has to be stated, big thing has to be stated, Christian interviewing Bobby at the UN and grilling her ass and trying to get all of the information out of her was spectacular. When Christian is getting interrupted by the Martian ambassador saying, where are you going with this?
Wherever the fuck I want.
Wherever the goddamn I like. Just that line delivery. I mean, one of the best moments of the show. And she had so many great moments that all of our favorite moments could have just been her, but we're being generous and leaving only a handful of them. I didn't even mention the I'll rain hellfire down upon them speech that she has. Oh, and one last final favorite moment, and then I'll move on. Ehrenreich being left on the voice message. to Mal.
Yeah.
And him saying, answer your fucking phone, like him just swearing about it, just being like, call me the fuck back. Just, I love how Sean Doyle swears in this show. It just always cuts me to the core when he does it, and it's just delightful every time. Just the show accepting swear words too is a great improvement because it just gives it more credence of it being our world, but in the future. They're not doing the Battlestar thing where they're just using fake swears. They're just dropping in a cocksucker or a fuck here and there. We've praised the season, but we also have issues with it. What were moments or decisions made along the way that just did not connect with you? Ones that you would say...
Bobby. The start of Bobby. We complained about it so much. But we met her, we met this crew. It was clear that they were all gonna die, and we were just waiting for it to happen.
The salt in the wound was the introduction of Bobby was amazing. Truly engaging, gripping. I was on board for the character and where she was going to go, and then they just didn't do anything with her. She either did not appear in episodes, or when she did, they gave her these what honestly felt like after school special level stories. It was just such a shame because if it was immediately what you said, there could have been a level of, okay, I don't have to invest in this as much, but I felt betrayed because she was so good in that first episode. The performance is immediately top tier. Yeah. This actress, Frankie Adams, she deserves to be a main cast member of the show.
And it feels earned that she has this place with Christian by the end of the season. But it's like you gave her a lot of baggage.
What were the things within her journey that really did rub you raw other than just watching things play out the way that we knew they were going to?
The repetition of the drama within her squad. It was just the same things. It was just, you're Earth, you're Mars, you're Earth, you're Mars.
You're rich,
you're
I'm
poor.
gay. Yeah.
Wait.
You want to start a war, Bobby, and I won't allow it. You're an old man, and I wish you would let me start a war.
A very short loop on repeat.
And it's funny because the truth is that repeat was maybe twice, and then they killed those guys. But it felt more of a repeat because there was a stretch of like 3 or 4 episodes they didn't even get mentioned or show up in. And so we were just left mentally with them being in the same place. And then when we picked them up again, they were in the exact same place. It gives this false impression in the mind, but they didn't make any of those Marines characters. They were just props, and that's why it was so hilarious when Bobby was up in arms that the Martians were using this Marine as a prop for their political game, because I couldn't help but just have a big roll of the eyes because the writing used them as just props. That's all they were. And it was so blatant about it. It's not as atrocious as Havelock, because there was at least a point to it, right? We can admit that. Yeah, there was a point to these people.
Yeah, there was.
Bobby is a great one to point to as something that just was not a thing that worked. A thing that really was not on my positives in this was the handling of Naomi. I really fell out of love with her during the course of the adventure, and then they would do things with her that made me like her again, and so I have this real jerky relationship with her character. I want to like her, but then she just does things that I find completely frustrating, and not because she's a frustrating person, it's because the writing puts her in a situation. I feel like the writing is
Yeah.
making her do things that I just don't jive with or believe from her. Like, remember that little stretch where she was belter and proud? And it was so that her and Holden could have friction and then she could do the blue goo stuff? Remember that? And then they just stopped kind of doing it for a bit? I don't know. It just, something about...
But she gave Fred the goo.
But that made a little bit more sense because she thought she was going to die.
We said earlier about how the show clearly likes Amos. I don't think they really like Naomi that much.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that they didn't like Amos for those few episodes when they made him like a really depressing guy. That was also a story I didn't care for.
No,
and it's not because Amos was sad. I haven't seen it pay off yet.
What are you doing here? What are you doing here? And then he has that moment where he's just like, I'm trying to make decisions and, it's not working out great. But I'm trying.
I like that. That was
like that, but it doesn't feel like it was enough of a payoff for those 3 episodes where it was just like, where's Amos?
Oh, Amos is drunk and depressed, and he's really in a violent place again. Naomi, do the showrunners and the writers like her as much as, say, Kotia? Because he gets less to do, but I think that they had more fun writing him.
Yeah.
Here's the worst thing of the season. I'm just going to lay it out. Well, the Bobby stuff was bad. The Alex stuff was disappointing. I'll say that. They made him angsty, but the worst thing, and I'll challenge you to argue against it. They completely missed. They completely screwed up and mucked up and fucked up the I love you of Naomi and Holden. Her admitting that she loves him meant nothing. It was done
nothing at all. Nothing at all. I really thought that you were going to make a point about Kocha.
No.
And about that stuff, but no, that moment is just completely nerfed. It's just the show thinks that it's they finally, oh my god, they're doing it. Oh my god, they said it.
I can't believe she just let it out. I can't believe she opened herself up like that.
Oh no, she's making it. Oh no.
Do you remember what our reaction was? Do you remember what we said when we watched it? We both exclaimed, why?
Yes.
Because we haven't seen a reason why. We understand that they have an attraction to one another. That's different to love. An attraction, an affinity is different to love. They both hadn't, at that point, gone to a stage of love. Not really. I don't believe it. And Rachel, you are the one who loves the romance in your stories.
I love, baby.
Rachel will watch TV shows and skip through scenes and plots and put them on fast forward or super speed or whatever to get to these moments. And the thing is, you need the connectivity to it. We enjoy Babylon 5 and it has slow burn romance, or it just has romances. And they include those scenes that let us have the I love you moment. We need to see Naomi and Holden do more than just fuck and more than just give each other mission statements. We need to see them on dates. We need to see them connect on an emotional level. There's an argument to be made that they don't have enough time.
We've discussed this many a time. It's about how you spend your time more than how much of it you have. And we get plenty of scenes with Naomi and Holden. But there's no spark there. And there are plenty of romantic relationships that aren't that kind where there is a spark, there is a flame, or like it's a slow burn, like with John and Delenn. But there is no chemistry there for me. That's the thing that's really lacking.
Between the characters or the actors?
Both. Because I'm like, you're just sticking two hot people in a room and getting them to smush faces and expecting me to get all hot and bothered. It's just like, if this was porn, that would make sense. But I'm not here for that.
I can't tell if it's a lack of chemistry between the actors because I don't think they get the scenes to demonstrate the romantic chemistry as much as they
get a
ought
post-coital scene.
But that's not the same.
It's not the same, but it is a very good opportunity, and they do not deliver on that. They do not deliver on that.
And so you have a strong opinion on that, and I don't. I wish I could have a strong opinion. Hence, this is the worst thing of the season. This is important. Between your two main characters, like two big characters, to say the I love you, you're also planting your flag in the show to say that this romance is important itself, that this relationship is going to be one of the cornerstones of your series. And I don't believe that. I just don't believe it. And to get into there's not enough time, there's always enough time. I don't need the season to be 22 episodes. I don't need it to be, I could have it be 6 and it could still work. Better Call Saul is a series that has a large ensemble of characters. It's a prequel. It has a lot of jobs to do. It wears many hats. It has a lot of time to manage. And yet, the romance at the center of it felt believable, felt real, and yet both characters were, guess what? Busy. Busy people. Busy people.
Flawed people.
People with missions to do. People with objectives. People with plots to do. And yet, you could still have scenes dedicated to them getting to know each other on some level more than what the plot necessitates. Naomi and Holden, I don't think they have that.
It's nice to see the Rossi back in one piece.
I need us to be okay.
We're fine.
This season is a mix of things, but it's mostly good. It's like a lucky dip that I'm pleasantly surprised by. But it made it very strange to try and pick out a favorite episode because I remembered my favorite moments way more easily. And then I had to go back and be like, wait, oh yeah, that was all in that one episode. So I guess that's my favorite.
It's always more difficult with a show where the episodes bleed together to pick out a favorite.
Yeah, because it feels like it would be much easier to pick my favorite storyline.
And unless the episode has a very unique gimmick to it, say, like if this season had an episode of just two people in a room together, you'd remember that more.
Yeah.
And when we've discussed shows on this podcast, they've either come from an era in which the serialized was not the norm, and so episodes had that more solitary nature to them. Or we've covered Star Trek Discovery, in which it's fucked up its serialization so badly, or it's so ill-conceived that it's actually easy to pick out the individual episodes, but even then, it could be a struggle because they smush together. I also was looking through this and having a struggle because outside, I made it easy for myself, and I imagine, Rachel, you should do this next time. I made in my notes, I wrote at the end of my notes if this was a favorite episode of mine, and I gave a little reasoning as to why. There's one in particular I knew would be a favorite because I said as much when we did the discussion. But what are some ones that did eventually leap out to you when you were looking back through the catalogue?
I landed on Home. Well, For one thing, it feels more like a season finale because it's the end of one of the books. And, like, we have a good amount of character stuff that's going on and being paid off. We have a nice spectacle. We have a good balance of our plots. And we have payoff.
Home was my favorite of the season. It just had teeth to it. There were consequences to the actions taken by the characters. It was just no hold barred. Like, there was hands, like the boxing gloves were off. We're going bare knuckle. It was brutal. There was everything I wanted in the show. There was political maneuvering. There was character interplay. There was the rambunctious adventure, the galactic scale, the furthering of the overarching plot lines. It was a buffet of glory. And Thomas Jane's performance was just phenomenal. Phenomenal is a word I'm going to use a lot because this cast is very talented. And when given the ability to show off why they're here, they really shine. And Thomas Jane is a well-known actor. He's been around the block a few times. He's been in iconic pieces of work and he's played iconic characters. And it feels like Home was the reason they hired him.
Yeah. I think that's a really insightful way to put it.
I had a few contenders that were close to being first, but they just didn't squeak by. I did love this season premiere. That season premiere was a real firecracker of a start to the show. Safe was good. I like Static as a slice of life affair. There was just a lot of little stories in that one, and I could welcome more episodes like Static in the season. But the one that really, really was just almost at first was the Weeping Somnambulist. I like that one a lot.
That was a really solid episode. And it succeeded in something that a lot of newer sci-fi shows fail at, which is the guest spots. The 1 or 2 episode characters. Like, the husband and wife team are memorable. And that isn't always the case.
All of the...
I still feel for her.
I do too. And the episode gave me what I thought The Expanse had as its selling point, which is sci-fi politics. The thing I very much was aware of is Chris Jen is a popular character. People love Chris Jen. People love what she does. And I was thinking that we were going to get a lot more of what she gets up to in this, which is her in a political meeting, in her element, saying words within words. Everyone's wearing masks. Everyone's playing their little roles. Aaron Wright doing the interruption of a moment of silence.
Yes!
Nearly skyrockets the episode to the top spot, but Chris Jen getting to do the things that we love to see. Just her being ruthless, but there's a justification behind it. She isn't just ruthless for the sake of power. She's ruthless because she's on a mission to save the day. And she knows that these people are stopping her from doing that. The Weeping Somnambulist was also unabashedly making Jim Holden fuck up.
Yeah, it's just like, he's lost. He's lost it. He is Moby Dicking the fuck out of this situation right now.
That's very much how it spins off in the episodes to come after, but this one, he is responsible in part, as is Amos, for the death of innocent people, and he doesn't seem as fussed about it as he was in the...
It's in the pursuit anything is justified in that pursuit.
On the flip side of things, though, would you agree that it's a little bit more difficult to pick out the least favorite episode? I didn't have one that was as obvious as the previous
same
season.
thing where there's scenes that I'm like, oh, fuck off. But then there's not whole episodes where it's easy to be like, yeah, that one. And the one that I ended up picking, I'm like, it's not even that bad. I just remember making fun of it, which is Cascade.
Oh, remind me of that one and why.
Well, they name dropped the episode several times. It's the one where they go to Ganymede and Prax is doing all of the investigations and figuring out that the station's collapsing, and we have the flashbacks, at least I think it's that episode, with May being abducted by the evil scientist, and we're like, yeah, and?
I'm a bit surprised that you picked that episode. We had a good time with it. I blurred with that chunk of episodes because they all had a vibe to them. There was a more of a balance of the Holden stuff with the adventuring around on Ganymede and the political intrigue with Earth and Mars. And I'm not at all surprised, though, that you chose an episode that had a focus on Bobby, because that's the one where she escapes and she wants to go see the ocean, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken. And my least favorite is actually early in the season, Godspeed. I just didn't care for that one.
That was one that I was like, oh, I've forgotten that one. So it was down the bottom for me as well.
I just didn't really have much of a pull towards it. The main story had potential of them taking the ship from the Mormons and trying to ram it into Eros Station, and then Eros Station moves, but it was all just, it did the job, but it wasn't the most thrilling journey. It was a function episode. You needed it to happen so home could happen. And any episode that is before or after home is going to get eclipsed as well, because I remember Paradigm Shift was not one I loved as much either, just because it felt so much like we had just started a whole bunch of new story threads, and yet it also had some really great stuff in there. Any before and after home is just going to pale in comparison, but Godspeed, maybe it's also because I'm bitter that the Mormons didn't get as much to do in the season, and that was their big opportunity for them to utilize the Mormons and those characters, and it just didn't.
But they sidestepped them instead.
You know what? I don't believe you. Why are you lying to us?
For your own safety, sit the fuck back down.
I am curious of where the characters fall for you in the season. What ones were in your top ranks, if you have any in the top ranks, and outside of just saying I love Amos, I love Christian, because I think it's obvious we both have that.
Yeah. I feel weird about the characters in The Expanse sometimes, because the ones I love aggressively. Like, Amos is my baby. I love that man. He's so fucked up.
You like him being fucked up.
I do.
Not too much, though, because he can be a little depressing for your taste. You like him when he's violent, though. You like when he beats a guy with a what was it, chicken?
I like it when he has presence. That's how I like to think about it. Like, his absence was distinct in the episodes where he was off getting drunk.
When he was taking a step back.
Yep.
Going inward.
I also really enjoyed Prax.
What a character. What a character. Prax is trying to get in my top 3 characters, and good for him. What a performance, too. That actor comes in and he plays the role as if this is the main character since the beginning, and I appreciate the dedication. With Amos, I just want to know, did you have a particular moment or story beats or characterization that made him a bit more of a favorite this season? Because what you said is similar to how you felt about him last season, that he's this big, rugged guy that could break you in half, but he's kind of got a heart of gold underneath it all. What about his experiences in the season has made him still in that spot for you?
They haven't just spun wheels with him. It does feel like they're exploring his character still and putting him in different situations and with different characters, and he's evolving. But into what? He doesn't know yet. But he has this desire to try and be better. And he doesn't feel like he's succeeding at that, but he still wants to try. And I really like that internal struggle of he had these rules for the way that he operated, the way that the world operated. And now he's trying to become more comfortable with things not fitting neatly into those boxes.
He has a well-trodden path of a character journey, but it's one that works. He is becoming more personable, likable. He's becoming more of an empathetic person, a human, yeah. This is a sci-fi setting. He is a human, but he is becoming more human. He did not get it at the beginning. He was just willing to shoot Holden in the back of the head and move on and not give it a second thought. But now he is comfortable with the people around him and being on the good side. He recognizes that there is good and bad, and he sees that he has been in the bad more often than in the good, and that's really appreciated. Prax, I didn't want to stop the conversation on him, but I just wanted to check in a little bit more on Amos, because we all know you love him, but Prax, I need to just speak on his behalf a bit, because my top 3 characters are similar, basically the same as last season. They haven't changed. Christian, Aaron Wright, Fred Johnson. Love those guys. Love them all. They just do more of what I liked from the first season, and that's not a complaint. It is praise. But Prax is my 4th favorite, and I could see him easily becoming a top 3 character. I don't even know where to begin to describe how much I enjoy him and why. He is the hurdle. I'm still in shock that they managed to bring in a new character late in the game relatively and make me as invested as I am with him, because they have failed that with some other characters. And
Yeah.
ones that they wanted me to like and care about, I've just not. And
I
so
get
I was
Prax more than I get Naomi. And that's a very odd thing, because it feels like they want me to be more invested in the slow discovery of Naomi's background. But I am way more interested in Prax.
Prax did something as well, which is he got to be an instant member of the crew. There was no pussyfooting around. We got his reasoning for why he is the way he is, and then he joins the crew. I was thinking that, they're going to do the thing that they did with Miller last season, but with Bobby, where Bobby eventually joins the crew, and I'm going to see how that dynamic plays out. And instead, it's Prax. Prax just strolls on in and he says, yeah, I'm kind of like a Star Trek character. I've got principles and morals. I'm a scientist. I've got a specialty that I'm a part of. And I worry about the metaphysical implications of our actions. And they treat him, for the most part, as if he's an inconvenience to them. Holden, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I love Holden and Prax's relationship, in which Holden is a jerk to him. Holden is such a miserable little shit to Prax. And that makes Amos bonding with Prax all the more rewarding because...
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's not a dynamic that you often see in shows, but it is something that I've experienced. So it was just delightful to watch them play and banter together, and the way that built up their relationship.
Holden is a person that has high morals and ideals. They get challenged and they get shaken, but he holds people to judgment. He's very judgy of individuals.
Oh, yeah.
And Prax, although has strong ideals and convictions, and he will voice them, and he will say that you are not on the right side of things, I don't feel like he's as judgy of an individual. Amos scares him, scares the fuck out of him, disturbs him, and yet he can still see that Amos is a good person. While Holden, it's taken him a while to realize that there's more to Amos than the brute that scares you. And I think that is why Holden and Prax are so unique together, because Prax on paper should be someone Holden likes. Prax is level-headed, he's reasonable, he's a morally upright guy.
Resentful of him?
Yeah. He really is resentful of this really nice guy. It's almost like Holden thinks that he's the normal one on the ship, and then this guy comes along and he's a normal guy. He's just that's the thing too. What do you think about that with Prax? On this, on the Rossi.
He's a guy that likes plants.
He's got a specialty, but I think he comes across as the most average Joe guy out of them all. I think he comes across as the most...
saved the galaxy.
Well, I mean, he did stop a hybrid at the end of the season. That's pretty important, but...
No, but like when he joins the crew, they're all like, yeah.
Oh, they've got...
We're those guys.
Yeah, and his rapport with Amos is a friendship in spite of what you would have thought. Amos, if you think of him in just pure, I guess, like baseline aesthetics, he's the beef head. You know, he's the beefcake on the ship. He's the muscle. He's the guy that shoots things. You don't think that he would have not only a relatable dynamic with the scientist of the ship, but also one in which they inform one another. That's the key, that they're very informative of one another. Amos learns things from Prax, but Prax also gains an understanding from Amos. It's not just a one-way street between those two guys. And I think Holden, more often than not, he makes it a one-way street in his relationship with others. Alex, you drive the ship. That's our relationship.
He has so much main character energy. He can't fit other people into his story.
You know, someone's gonna try and test us, right?
Nah. Not today. They're saving their bullets for each other.
Least favorite characters. Are there ones that just don't do it for you in this show? We've cut away some of the fat, but
Weirdly enough, the only character that comes to mind I'm meant to dislike, and that's Diogo. Is that how you say his name?
Diogo?
Diogo.
The little shit stain.
Mhm.
Rock
like,
hopper kid.
I was there when Miller died.
You know what? I'm Team Diogo. I fucking love that little freak. He's just such a... You must have PTSD when you see him because he's like every kid you teach at school. He must reek of like shitty deodorant, that guy, right? Like, doesn't he look like he reeks of brute deodorant? Isn't that right? Is that why you hate this kid? Because he reminds you of so many kids you teach? Oi, miss, I saw Miller. I was with him when he died, miss. I got my dick wet, miss. Miller told me to get my dick wet, so I did. Like, I love him, but I don't know. It seemed so easy when we walked in of, oh yeah, I can pick least favorite character and favorites and all of that, but I honestly don't know. Because Bobby was good to start with and good to end with. Just in the middle, I didn't care for what they were doing with her. I didn't find her...
I do think she's my least favorite out of the central cast.
I think it's Alex. I think they just don't know what to write for the character outside of his job. They have some threads about his life before with his family, but
it never gets fully off the ground.
It's not a substitution for a compelling character. I've said it many times. The performance is good, but that doesn't mean the character is the best to me. And so Alex, he had his emo angsty phase, and then he just became guy who drives the ship. And boy, does he drive it really good sometimes, Rachel. He real good at flying the ship and giving exposition. Bobby, she must rank low because they just don't do much with her. But unlike with Alex, I can see her improving and where they can take her to make her better. But I have lost faith in them making Alex more than what he is. Do you have any thoughts on that about either of those characters in terms of the ability to improve them? Because it's easy to say, oh, I don't like this character, and say the reasons why, and then move on to the next bit of our discussion. But
yeah, I agree with the statement about Alex in particular, because they just don't know what to do with him, really. So he gets crumbs because they need a pilot, but they just kind of fit him in around everything else.
And outside of giving him more exterior storylines like they did this season of what if Alex felt like he got some people killed and he feels guilty about it. There's just not enough resonance of what drives the character internally. I can't tell you what his arc is. I just said a moment ago what I believe Holden's arc is, what Amos's arc is. What is Alex's one other than guy who drives the ship? And maybe one day he won't be able to drive the ship, and that causes a problem. Like I look at Alex too much as he is a convenience for them to go from place to place, rather than a guy with substance. Real upset, but with Bobby. What do you think about her in terms of where we can go with the character? I think there's far more of an open path for the creators to take the character down a much more relevant and hearty story than with Alex currently. At least that's how I feel. I feel like they've positioned her ideologically and in position with other characters where you can do stuff with her.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot more possibilities with where they've left her. Like, is she going to stay with Christian? What might that look like? How is she going to feel about Mars now? How are the media going to portray her? All of those are interesting questions.
Will she meet the Rossi crew? What will her dynamic be? But what will her worldviews bring to that group? We've already seen it begin to rub up against Kotia and rub up against Christian. What is Naomi and Bobby like when you have them in a room together? Because one's an former military Martian and one's an OPA terrorist formerly as well. Or Amos and Bobby, what are they like together? Because you could argue they're very similar to one another. Would they get on? Would they be friendly? Would they even be in a relationship, perhaps? Because I can see that being a potential ship out there for fans of the material, or even within the writing down the road. I don't know, nor do you, but we can at least vocalize these things. Well, with Alex, what do you get? Maybe we'll meet his wife and kid and shed some new light on why he is such a shitty dad. I don't know. I don't think the show really wants me to care that much about it. It's just he loves his ship. He will fuck his ship. There's some twists, some turns, some reveals, and some moments that were surprising. Ones that were plot-based or choices made from the writers. And there was some that I was taken aback by. Holden being a character that I'm invested in, I was wanting that to happen, but it's still a surprise that it did.
They pulled it off.
And same with killing off Miller. That was a surprise. I knew once we got to that point that Miller was going to die, but I really did think, he'll at least get to the end of the season if he does die. And so I was a bit taken aback with that. But a moment that I was dumbfounded by, and this is a funny moment, Rachel. This isn't a legit one, but the accent from Dr. Iturbi fucking threw me for a loop. I could never get a I could never.
You called him by his name.
Well, he's dead now. Maybe, don't know. It's a mystery. I feel. But
he's in stasis.
He's floating in Venus. I'm sure he got poisoned to death. But that choice on the production's part, I'm still, my mouth agaped at it. It's so distracting of how inconsistent the accent is, to the point in which, why bother? The actor's good. You can tell he's good.
What? Why? What? How did we get this? How did we get Dr. Accent?
I was free. They could have hired me to do it. The biggest surprise, but one that I was so happy with, which is Holden and Naomi just commit to a relationship. Although I don't like their relationship,
they're not milking that.
I was so...
for the whole season. It's just like, they're together, and that's it. They're just together. It's refreshing.
This show could easily do the will they, won't they for the entirety of it with them two. And they just ran right over that line and said, no, we're not going to do that. They're going to have sex in this episode. Yeah, they're in a relationship. Get over it. Season 2, what were the moments that took you by surprise?
I think a moment that took me by surprise was how much I cared when Aaron was writing that letter of, like, the goodbye to, like, his wife and his kid. I didn't expect to care that much, because he is a fucking piece of shit.
A sad turn in the story that it's not that I didn't expect it, because I didn't think we would get more development of this guy, but the Admiral that stepped down, the one that could not abide Christian's playing of the game, and so he stepped away from being the head of the fleet, and that he was allowed this we were praising a little while ago. The little guest spot characters, getting their moment in the sun to shine ever so bright. Here's an example, the best example probably of it, where we noticed, you and I looked at that actor in the first season and said, he doesn't even have a name, this character, but he has presence, the character and the actor, and he has a point of view that is really interesting to see bounce off of Christian. And so to see him take his leave and exit because he's such a man of high values.
He's a man of honor.
I was sad, and it was a surprise.
Yes.
I thought he was going to be around more than he was, but that's not a complaint.
He played an important role. Still.
Call for a vote immediately. They'll back you.
Sharing the blame does not change what this is. Fleet Command will not. I will not support this escalation.
Are you saying you won't carry out a lawfully given order?
Yum Yum is a moment in Star Trek Discovery that is charged, sexually speaking. And we have made many moments within this season our Yum Yum moment because we want to find the horny factor of the Expanse, and it teases you. It teases you with it, but season 2 is pretty dry.
We got one sex scene.
We got
a couple of makeouts
and shirtless scenes. And Rachel, you have your automatic Amos pick. I don't know if you have one for the season as a whole, but you have said what my pick of the season is, which is the sex scene. Of course it is. And it's not just because it's a sex scene, but it was arousing. It was charged. It was primal and erotic. It was a release for those two characters. The people... these actors are incredibly attractive. That's the thing about The Expanse. You have to be buff to be in this cast.
Yeah, it's full of hot people.
Yeah, look, hot people. Yeah, hot people. And give me season 3. Here's your next challenge. Add a member of the Rossi crew who's just a fat slob. Adam, you cowards. I don't want any more beefcakes, hunks, and babes on that ship.
Even Shed wasn't.
He was like a lean, fit guy. Give me, basically what I'm asking for is give me a balding, fat loser on this ship. I want someone who I could feel like a real person could be, rather than all of these Adonises that you have on this ship. Everyone is gorgeous and hot, and they are buff, and that sex scene, it just, anytime you get reminded about how physically fit Stephen Strait is always going to be a contender for the Yum Yum of the season. But what is your Amos pick, Rachel? Do you have one? And do you even have a regular selection? I just assumed you were going to go with an Amos one.
I don't know which one to go with. There's lots of fun ones. And there's lots of odd ones that I find fun. That I'm like, I could go with that little bit or that bit or but I think I'm gonna go with the one that I already mentioned, which is why am I always the one that gets shot?
You liked him bleeding. You liked him squealing like a little pig about getting shot. He was such a bitch about it too. Like, for such a tough guy, he's just like, geez, why is it always me? Boy. And then Kramer comes in and is like, whoa, Amos, you've been shot. Like, very Seinfeldian, the whole exchange about being shot. Just this extremely weird thing that happened. I get your point. But it has to be shirtless Amos in the final episode. They showed us the V down to, near the abs.
I thought that was just a bit
That would have been my selection for the entire
Fair.
season if Jim Holden didn't fuck at the beginning again.
Fair.
Oh!
I went for a line, but yeah, that was definitely yum yum.
Let's have a look over what the title for the next episode is, the season 3 premiere, and give our predictions. Now, we've already said our piece on what the season could have within it, but let's have a gander at this title and give our predictions on what will be happening in the first episode of the 3rd season. Now, are you ready to hear what it is called, Rachel?
What if I said no?
Well, then you'll never hear it.
Okay, no.
Okay, block your ears so I can tell them. It's fight or flight. Now, what do you think's going to happen in that episode, Rachel? Rachel, what do you think's going to happen in the season 3 opener?
I think Holden's going to be an asshole. Naomi's going to leave the ship. I think
Do you think she'll go anywhere in particular?
she's going to go back to Tycho. And I think we're going to get more Fred. And Christian is also going to head to Tycho.
I think that it's going to have a focus on Christian, Kotya, and Bobby still trying to get off of Mao's ship and escaping. There's going to be some hurdles and problems, not just getting off the ship, but flying away. I hope that they actually stumble across some more stuff relating to the Caliban project on his ship, maybe even meet up with him. When it comes to her, I could also see at the end of it, she is realizing that she cannot go back to Earth. That she is cut off from Earth because of Ehrenreich. Even though she survived, she's unable to go back for whatever set
That's
of
why
reasons.
I think she's going to go to Tycho.
My prediction for the Rossi crew is that they will want to deal with Fred Johnson, but Prax's daughter's stuff is going to lead them to other places. They're going to have to decide which is more important, dealing with Fred Johnson and their proto-molecule, or going along the storyline that has been furthered with Prax's daughter, because we did end the season on her being on some random moon or planet. And I just think that you need to pick up that a little bit too, because Prax is still a new character, and it's just a deeply relatable story of a father trying to get his daughter. Remember what Amos said about it? Yeah, that's a good reason. That's a good little plot line you have for yourself. And my wild horse prediction for a storyline in the season 3 premiere is we meet a new character. I think we will meet Mao's other daughter. That's my prediction, because I've mentioned her a lot. I don't know if she'll be on the ship, but I can just see we'll cut over to Mao's other daughter and she will interact in some way with the story or the plot. I don't think we'll get any Venus stuff. I think that is just going to be left in the background. I think that's just going to be a thing that the show will put on the back burner for a couple.
Okay.
And that is our predictions for the next episode. There's nothing else on your end? There's no other little character that you don't think we're going to see the Gaunt Belter again? Do you think that we'll ever see the Sirius Station again?
Maybe.
What's holding you back from thinking that we would? Is it just because Miller's not around? That was the only person who had connection there?
Yeah, like it's just we've shifted away, and it's not as important. Like it's still there, and it still gets acknowledged, but it's not where the action is.
And that is our discussion on Season 2 of The Expanse. we will be back in a little while to talk about the season 3 premiere, so make sure to tune in and join us for that. Give it a watch for yourself if you're someone who has experienced the Expanse for yourself in the past, or you're someone going through it for the first time. Come join us on our watch through and talk to us. Let us know your opinions on season 2 and the things that we have said here today. Who are your favorite characters? Who are your least favorite characters? What was a storyline that leapt out to you, or an episode that left its mark for you? Would love to hear from you. You can contact us.
Which moment?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, which moment was more yum yum? The actual sex scene or Amos shirtless?
They both
Let us know which was your preferred yum yum.
We can be contacted at yumyumpod@gmail.com. You can join our Patreon and get these episodes much earlier, be a part of our community over there, support the show, and be able to communicate with us on that group Discord. All of this is included in the description below, as well as the social media pages that we are on, and we like to post regularly there. And if you haven't rated and reviewed the show as well as share it around with everyone, you should. It would be very nice if you did. Rachel's crossing her arms right now at the people who have not done those things. We have a YouTube page, we're on Spotify, we're on all of those places. So subscribe to us, give us a like, give us a 5-star, give us a review. It would do so much for us. We would love it greatly. And that is all. The Gaunt Belter, he didn't show up in season 2. Now that's not as offensive as Havelock not appearing, because the Gaunt Belter, they didn't try to tell me he was important. The fact is, they didn't try to tell me he was important. Thus, he became important to me. Havelock, on the other hand, they fucking killed that guy, Rachel, and then brought him back to life, only to not do anything with him again. That you're pushing away the mic, but I just want to get this as the final record, like a final thing for our discussion. Is that just like real talk? How weird is that?
Oh, like it's weird, but not surprising that they've ejected the mostly unnecessary audience surrogate.
But why did they do it straight away? Because him living raised so many questions, and then it also made me think, as it did you, that he would be relevant to stories going forward. He never came back in season 2. Maybe season 3, season 4, season 5, season 6.
Hey, we know this show plays the long game, so who knows?
He could be in, you know what I see?
Series finale, Havelock returns.
On Sirius Station. And I actually see that happening as a montage at the end of like all of the characters we met along the way. You know how you see that in a lot of shows where they have like that musical montage?
The corrupt head of the police on series.
And his sex worker girlfriend is now not a sex worker and she's a school teacher, because they often do that bullshit trope. But in all genuine like sincerity, I could see the end like an ending montage of like music playing, and we get all like, here's what this character's up to. Even this little dinky character that you didn't care about.
And it'll be like, oh, wait, was that Havelock?
Could it be Havelock? I didn't recognize him without a piece of metal in his chest.
And I was gonna say, and he's hosting a diplomatic meeting with the Gaunt Belter.
They're having sex, Rachel.
See you then. Well, voila.